Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't know why they put the pulpit there. I don't need it. I'm going to open with the Lord's Prayer in the ancient Aramaic tongue. Shall we pray? Awon washmeya nitdashishmach te malkuthach nechwe subianna kekan dashmeya up bar haulan lach masunkan yao mana washwalklan how bain a kanadap Hanan Shwakin Lahaya Wayne La Tatlinasiona Ella Pasan Min Bisha Mithol Lilahi Malkutha Heilig Dish Bohta La Alam Almin Amen. Believe it or not, I came this morning prepared to give you a good Christmas story lesson. But during the meditation, something else came to me. And so I'm going to have to go with that. And wait to hear the title, though. Because the title came to me. Letting go of God.
All right.
How? Letting go of God. And there's no scripture I can give you for that one. And when it came to me, I thought, well, but this is Christmas. Why would this be coming to me? And then it began to unfold within me. And letting go of God. And I thought, more and more began to come in, and I realized, yes, people have all kinds of images of God. And this is when even people get angry with God and say, He didn't rescue me, and I hear, because I've been lecturing now for a very, very long time, all over the world, and in churches and everywhere, and the anger some people have towards God. And they say, I don't believe in God, and yet they're angry with God. Well, they're still holding on, see. They're still holding on to an image of God, something that was taught to us. And then every once in a while in my classes, people have conniptions. You know what I'm talking about? Because I bring out the Aramaic, which is so totally different from the way we've been taught and brought up. And deep buried in our subconscious are symbols and belief systems about God and about revenge and about all these different things about Jesus and about God and the apostles. Even if I were to tell you, just like this last Tuesday night, I went into the oracle of Isaiah, where he said, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive, and she will call his name Emmanuel." And you'll find that in Matthew. Then I explained it, what Isaiah meant by it, and how the scribe put that in the Gospel of Matthew, and it had nothing to do with Jesus at all. He was never called Emmanuel. And I just ruined Christmas. Because that's part of the Christmas story, you see. And when I explained what Isaiah was talking about, and Jesus, where do you find it anywhere that Jesus was called Emmanuel? No, the angel visiting Joseph said, and Mary said, you should call his name Yeshua. Jesus, and not Emmanuel. But that's just one little thing. What if I were to tell you there are two birth stories that differ with one another and contradict one another? But you see, when people find this out, it starts to remove a sense of security.
That's right.
And it begins to turn things where they feel insecure. And really, to find God, you have to let go of God. You have to let go of all your images. You have to let go of all that. There was an atheist on TV. It was an actress, and she was doing a 3-act program going through the Bible. I just caught little bits of it. She's going through the Bible, showing all the different Bible stories and how ridiculous they were and what kind of a God this is. And I thought, well, yes, but that's how people believe in God.
That's right.
This is the image they have of God. A vengeful, angry, constantly watching you, knowing every step you're doing, you know.
That's right.
I hate to tell you this, but you're your own watchdog, no one else. There is no minister, no angel, no nothing. You. You're recording everything. God isn't giving any dictation to any angel on your life history. Can you imagine that? God saying, put this down. Because it says the books were opened, right? And the judgment day. This is all Eastern. The books open in the Near East because most of the judges have to go by the laws that are written. And the books that are open are the laws. And they judge according to those laws. But you see, we take all that literally. And we've carried around these images of God and images of Christmas instead of the real meaning of Christmas. We carry these images, which some of it is good. Because it brings... my message really was on the word goodwill towards humanity, but that's not there in Aramaic at all. The angels didn't say goodwill, but I'm not going to get into that. You'll have to come to the second service on that one. Letting go of God, letting go of images that we've had of God, teachings that we were brought up with, teachings that our parents gave us, that we learned in Sunday school. And you know, and I always tell people, we're always wearing our Sunday school glasses. And when we hear a speaker, we're always judging according to what we learned in Sunday school. Because these images are there. But letting go of God is the only way to find God. Because you have to let go of all that. I'll never get my first experience. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic. And I was told all sorts of things. But then when my mother died when I was 12, and my father came, he lived in California, we lived in New York, and my father came and got my brother and me and brought us out to California. And I don't want to go into the whole story, but what happened was we were invited to this church because this pastor bought the house. And we went to the church, and we had to get special permission from the priest to attend. They said, as long as you don't participate, you can attend. So I went. My father wasn't in any religion, but he also attended. And I had my girlfriend with me at the time. And we sat right in the front row. And it was in an Assembly of God church. And it was a Wednesday night service. And all of a sudden I heard a voice. And the voice said to me, stand up. I thought, something's going wrong with me. And my girlfriend, who was Russian at the time, Sonia Ryback was her name, I never forgot her name, sitting next to me, and she could sense something was wrong. So she leaned over and whispered to me, she says, what's the matter with you? I said, I'm hearing voices. And she says, what do you mean you're hearing voices? I said, a voice is telling me to stand up. She says, don't do it. But I began to perspire because I was fighting this, because the voice was so strong. First I heard it like it was someone whispered in my ear. Then it went inward, and I heard it so strong, and it kept urging me to stand up. And the thing is, when my mother had died when I was 12, I was always outgoing. But when my mother died when I was 12, I became an introvert. I fell totally inward. And as a result of it, I couldn't get in front of people. I even took public speaking in the high school I was attending, and I was getting straight Fs. Because every time I stood up, I went blank. And I thought, I can't do it. I was too nervous, too scared. And I always walked with my head hanging down. And maybe you won't like this as a Sunday morning talk, but I'm doing it anyway. And my head was hanging down all the time. And my father made me take public speaking to get me to get out. But I couldn't because of my mother's death. And my brother was with me, though, too. He was younger, 2 years younger. But I just couldn't find any life anymore. And so there I was sitting there, and with that voice telling me to stand up in front of these strangers. I never met anyone before. What will I say? What will I do? I'll never forget. I started to move to stand up because what happened is he opened it to have different people give their testimonies. And I thought, and I was getting that ahead of time to stand up, but I thought, still, well, what would I say? What would I tell the people? And all of a sudden then, I couldn't resist it any longer, even though my girlfriend was hanging onto my hand to prevent me from standing up. I broke loose and stood up, and something hit me from the top of my head all the way down through my whole body. And to this very day, now this is something, to this very day, I cannot tell you what I said. I have no idea what I said. And it was like I went blank. And my father, he was sitting in the back. His jaw dropped because he knew, how could I dare stand up in front of these people? And then all of a sudden I knew I was free. I was free of myself, free of the pain I had been going through since I was 12. This was when I was 16. And I was free of all that, free of everything. And I guess that's what I must have been talking about, because when it hit me, I felt freedom. Totally free. No attachments to anything or anyone, and most of all to myself. No attachments. I lost that sense of myself. Lost it. And there was no boundaries all of a sudden. And I was free. Then, from that moment on, I changed. And the next week when I went back to school, I entered a public speaking contest. Loyola it was called. It was Catholic. Over 1,000 speakers. I tied first place. I got straight A's. From then on, I even remember my public speaking teacher, Mrs. Asadorian. She was Lebanese. And because it's totally changed. And I was so happy and free. And I thought, well, this is the place I need to belong to. I need to stay with this church because look what happened to me there. And then I thought all Christians were the same. And my neighbor next door was Jehovah's Witness. And he had all these Bible things. I said, oh, I'd be very interested in this. So he gave me all of his books. And then some other friends that I had were Seventh-day Adventists. And they gave me their books, and I carried them around with me. And so when I go to Wednesday night class, Bible class or something like that, and I had all these different, they were small little books. Had them in my pants. How my pants pockets were bulging with all these different things I was reading, and the pastor looked at me and says, "What do you have in there?" I said, "All these wonderful books on the Bible and Christ." And there was Seventh-day Adventist, and there was Jehovah's Witness and all that. He says, "Don't you know that's error?" I said, "What?" He says, "Yes, that's error." He says, "It's heresy." And I didn't know. I didn't even know what had happened to me on that Wednesday night. They told me I was born again, whatever that was. Because I was brought up. I never heard these terms before. All I knew there was Jews and Christians, and that's it. That's how sheltered a life I was living. And he said, "You've got to return those." So I'll never forget. I went back to Seventh-day Adventists, gave it all back to them, and they didn't say anything. They said, "Okay." When I went to the Jehovah's Witness people, with my neighbors next door, and I gave it all back to them, and I said, I can't read this. It's not right." They said, "How do you know it's not right?" "Well, the pastor told me." And they said, "Oh, so you were Roman Catholic once, weren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "And the priest told you what was right and what was wrong?" I said, "Yes." He says, "And now you've substituted the pastor to take the same role as the priest." I said, "Yes." I said, "This is exactly what I've done." And he says, "Well then, how do you know?" I said, "But now you're telling me you're right and they're wrong. So you're in the same position as they are." He says, "Give me those books." So I returned back to him, and I left. And I went into utter confusion. I thought, what? I thought I had something real had happened to me. I had found something that was real. And now all of a sudden, this one says that they're wrong, everyone else is wrong, and they're right. This one is wrong, and they're right there. And all these different images, all these different belief systems, and everyone pointing to each other and saying, "Everyone's going to hell if you don't adopt this way." And I went into pain and agony, so much so I contemplated suicide. I tried several times to take my life because I thought, at least when I was Roman Catholic, I knew where I was going. I knew all the rules and the regulations, and I was on that path. Now I'm thrown where there's no path. And everyone is telling me only their path is correct. Only their way is correct. And then I had accepted Jesus, and I was all right. And I thought, how about people that hadn't accepted Jesus or hadn't even heard about Jesus or anything like that? How could those people be going to hell? Anyway, I thought I was on my way to hell because I had pulled away from everything. And now what was I to do? And I'll never forget. When I just tried to step in front of a car coming in. This is in North Hollywood, California, at the high school there. And there were the cars. It was a very busy street. And I thought, I'll just step. And just as I went to do it, and a car tooted like mad, and it was like something stopped me. And I thought, but I couldn't do it then. And I went home, and I was all by myself. My brother had gone back to New York. My father had just gone through a divorce, and I was just alone there in the house. And I thought, what was I going to do? I wished I were dead. And I went in to the bedroom, and I began to weep. And all of a sudden, a light came into the room. Bright light, and it was a human being. And the face glowed, so I couldn't make out the face. The face glowed, and the voice said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. None of them are right. Follow me. And everything lifted from me once again. It was all gone. And then I realized that and from then on I knew that no matter what, where I would go, what the changes would be, whatever would happen, anything that was not right would be eliminated in time. But I had to lose all my images of God, all my understanding of what I was brought up with. And that is the hardest thing in the world, is to let go of the God you were brought up with. Okay? Thank you. That's the hardest, because your security is in the belief system. Mm-hmm. Your security is what you've been told. And now when I come with the Aramaic, I upset a lot of people, because I take those images we have of God that we find in the Bible, and I show that it's not what you think, because you have to understand it from the cultural point of view. You have to understand from who was writing. The secret of the Bible, as I've said here and I've said in my classes, the secret of grasping or understanding Scripture is you've got to realize that it's the story of transcending consciousness. That each stage of understanding of God is in the Bible. And they kept transcending until it climaxes in the teachings of Jesus, who saw God as nothing but the beloved, pure love, pure joy, pure harmony. There is no image of God. That's why God said the first commandment, you shall have no other gods, and the second commandment, you shall make no images. But what we do is we make images from the Bible. We make images of Christ. We make images of stories. We make images of legends. We make images of what we've been taught when we were in Sunday school, or from our parents, or from ministers that we hear on the radio or see on TV. And all these images sit in our subconscious, and we wonder why we're not free. We wonder why. But you have to be brave, and you have to step out by faith. Have to be brave and step out by faith and realize that everything will come to you in time. Because we cannot get it all at one time. You know, people sometimes, when they come to me and they have all these questions and they're so anxious, you know, they want to know, I said, but you can't grasp it all at one time. It takes time. Letting go of God to find God is a process. It's a process. It's not something you can do overnight. You may have the beginning steps and the joy. Even people who come into New Thought. You'd be surprised how many times New Thought people have come to me. Now, I've lectured in many different kinds of churches, but a lot in New Thought, that the Gentiles were put under, and which were very simple. About eating, that you shouldn't eat meat with the blood and all and that, but I can't teach that now because they said I have to wrap it up. But in conclusion, I want to say, let go of God. Let go of all those images and find the true meaning. I wish you'd be here in my classes. I don't start them again till January 12th. They're over for now. January 12th, I start them again on Tuesday night. And we're going through Isaiah right now, the oracles of Isaiah, which we begin again in January. But if you can, try to make it. This is why I felt in this first service, if I just opened it a little for questions, because there's a lot of questions. And even Paul, you know, talking about that God ordained the death of Jesus. God doesn't ordain any death. God doesn't take anyone. God receives us all. Thank you. Thank you.